This is KBRN, a small frequency drifting through the night of Bracken County, Northern Oregon. It's just past the hour, and every clock in the studio moves with a face that has nothing to do with me. A small glass-walled control room, an old mixer, boxes of cartridge tapes, rusted tools, and a wall with no window. This room absorbs my voice, yet still sends it out. In that sense, radio is half confession, half abandonment. Tonight again, I speak, listen, and wait somewhere in between. Night transmission is simple. Check the music coming from auto-scheduling, air public service ads on time, grab the equipment by the neck when it slips. No one asks my name. Here, a name is only a function, like a call sign or a frequency number. For a while I had no reason to say my own name aloud. Few people ever called me. Maybe that's why, when that number first reached my ears, I thought it was just a prank. 91.3, I know the county's radio dial by touch. From 88 to 108, I know which spots are empty, which overlap, where the feedback rises, and when the wind causes interference. 91.3 was always blank, not one of ours nor any other local station. I liked that emptiness. Even the static was steady, washing my ears clean every night. When the ear's empty, thoughts grow still, and from that stillness, distant sounds begin to surface. So that first night, what I heard wasn't silence breaking. It was silence opening its own door. It began as a signal, a human-made regular waveform. I turned on the oscilloscope instinctively. Across the screen ran a thin line, like the first stroke on a blank page, with periodic peaks rising and falling. The tone was clean, not the trembling of a cheap loop tape, nor the flutter of an amateur transmitter. The problem came next. When the tone stopped and the noise returned, the noise began to keep time. Within that snowy static, there was pattern, more precisely intention. I lowered the fader, turned up the monitor volume, and pressed one headphone cup tight to my ear. Sounds too faint for the speakers became tactile through the headphones, like grains of sand. In there, I heard something like a breath. Not the kind a machine makes, nor one a machine would bother to imitate. The awkward, fragile start of a human syllable. At first, I thought it was my own breathing, then the airflow from the AC, then the vibration of the fridge. I even shut off all the power in the control room. But even in total silence, that sound remained, the faint tack of lips parting, the damp click of a tongue leaving the palate, the hesitation right before someone begins to speak into a microphone. And someone called my name. At first, I thought I misheard. Names are easy to mistake for similar sounds. Every system in this building pronounces my name constantly, phones, ad servers, everything, because I programmed it that way. But the name that came through the radio carried that strange length only a human voice gives when recalling a name. Longer than its letters, as long as a memory. With a trembling hand, I nudged the dial slightly. 91.2, nothing. 91.4, nothing. Back to 91.3, and the noise changed. Now it blended with my speech, folding itself into my voice, making me say things I hadn't said. I scoured the room, frantic for a technical mistake. Patch cables, line-ins, tape decks, compressors, automation computer, return line. Nothing was wrong. Everything was in its place, doing its job. Only 91.3 was watching me. In radio, words often arrive before reality does. They scatter into the dark on waves, but sometimes they return. The words I heard every night were returned words. The listener board always filled with similar messages, fighting off drowsy driving. There's no one in my passenger seat, but the seatbelt alarm keeps ringing. Can you tell me last night's music title? And sometimes stranger ones. Please close the storage room door. That door must not open. The broadcast never went out, yet they always knew the exact song titles in ad order. I thought they were jokes. Some jokes stay unloved long enough to outlast everything. Maybe that's what these were, long forgotten jokes. That dawn, I opened my log notebook and wrote down the date, time, and frequency. 91.3. Tone, breath, name, and beneath that, a word I couldn't quite recognize. Something I thought I'd heard. Something that felt like it once left my own mouth. The page was damp. My fingertips were cold and stiff. My hand no longer felt like mine. A hand as signal, a sound as signal. The next day, I checked the engineering logs. No issues reported. Transmitter power normal, return line normal, backup generator normal. Noon auto check passed. 91.3 wasn't ours. We didn't exist there. I pulled out an old county frequency chart from the drawer. The box for 91.3 was blank, pure white, like the margins of my notebook. I thought about how emptiness calls your name. An empty space can hold any name. That's why emptiness calls the truest one. Night came again. I stocked a drink in the vending machine, closed the studio door, hung the headphones around my neck, and raised the fader. Watching the dial set to 91.3, I waited. Nothing happened. Minutes passed. A few songs played. The air in the studio was lukewarm. I started calculating run times and ad slots. Numbers calm me down. Numbers delay fear. Then I realized how quiet I'd become. As I grew quiet, the radio listened closer, and finally the static laughed. A sound too thin to be laughter, too clean to be weeping. Like the ripple made when a tiny insect touches water. It slid past my ear, down my jaw. I turned off the mic, turned the monitor louder, hit record. The level meters moved faintly, drawing a thin line across the screen. Between those lines, someone walked, not on the studio floor, on the line itself. I pressed my ear to the base of that path, collecting the traces they left behind. The traces gathered, becoming speech. Speech always points to a place. Archive. Below the station is an old tape storage room. Once, ads, dramas, and announcements were kept on carts and reels, and their ghosts remain. From the studio, a narrow hallway leads to a back stairwell. Down there, the wall paint turns an older green. The air cools. I descended, still wearing the headphones. 91.3 held its breath as I went down. I opened the door into a long, dark room. Metal shelves numbered, cassettes and reels leaning against one another, labels exposed. I stood still for a long time. When I finally moved, my steps stirred the dust. Even without light, the dust knew how to find each other. One label caught my eye, handwritten in pen. KBRN test. Next to it a number, 1979, and beneath, in small letters, 91.3. My fingertips went cold. I took the reel upstairs to the playback room beside the studio. The reel-to-reel deck still worked. I had replaced the belt not long ago. I loaded the tape, threaded the spool, closed the roller, pressed play. The drum spun with a brief tremor. Before the sound began, I heard the magnetic layer shimmer faintly. The voice on the tape was low and dry, not a studio condenser, but a field dynamic mic. He stated the date and time, a summer night in 1979. Test transmission, temporary frequency, 91.3. He sent tones, recorded reception levels, between words, awkward gaps, the kind that exist only when someone is alone. He adjusted the mic distance, checked cable contacts, toggled the line to the transmitter, and for a moment, a short moment, there was that breath, the same one from my notebook. When he stopped speaking, someone called his name. It was short and clear, Edward. The volume spike made my ears ring. On the tape, chair scraping, metal clinking, a door opening in haste, then quick, tangled breaths. He came back to the mic and said, "Someone just called my name." I'm alone in this room. The transmitter is in test mode, not on air. But just now, my name. His voice trailed off. My lips went dry. The summer inside the tape and my present night touched the same wall. Then, very quietly, another voice said, "Don't close the door." I turned around instantly. The door behind me was half open. The studio beyond was dark, only the exit light faintly glowing. The playback room glass reflected my face, headphones on, motionless. The darkness beyond stretched deep, filled with the breath of machines. Edward moved toward the door on the tape. His shoes scraped bits of tape from the floor. Someone's hand rested in the door crack. The skin of that hand was sound. I looked at my reflection's eyes. They were slightly deeper than mine. The tape suddenly cut off. A sharp click, reels stopping, hiss gone. I reached out, thinking the machine had failed, but the power was still on. The counter numbers frozen. Time stopped on the tape. Only the air in the room kept flowing. I pressed play again. Nothing. Stop, rewind, play again. This time the machine grumbled and began to turn. Hiss returned, a short tone, Edward's breath, and then, very clearly, someone said, "You heard it too." I took off the headphones. Sometimes the sound grows louder the moment you remove them. Words in the air outlast those in machines. Slowly, I went back to the studio and tuned to 91.3. The static resisted, then yielded. At the end of that path, I waited for my name. It didn't come easily. Something else came instead. My own voice. My narration from yesterday. One sentence, two. The lazy tone. The offhand jokes. The song intro I gave. I heard my own voice playing right in front of me. Same room, same time, same fader. Yet the recording log had no such file. The auto schedule listed no live segment at that hour. I lowered the fader, but the voice kept going. The fader felt lighter, the copper inside the cables thinner. Before current could become sound, they had already become words. That was the first time I felt the clock watching me. Each tick made 91.3's static hum in rhythm. When the tick and noise found the same tempo, the voice grew clearer. And finally, someone asked me, in an ordinary tone, "Night shift again, huh?" I didn't answer. When a DJ gets a question on air, they don't respond. They play music, run ads, announce the next segment. I moved my hand. While my hand moved, I watched myself. and yesterday's voice walked toward me. My words already carried meaning before reaching my ears. Meaning became direction. Direction became stairs, downward, then upward. I would descend to the archive, then return. I would open, then close the door. I would start, then stop the transmission. I would empty 91.3, then fill it. And in between, someone would call my name. The final public ad of the night aired. The phone number of a local diner was spoken clearly. The diner was probably still open. I didn't write the number down. Instead, on the last line of my notebook, I wrote 2 words, 1979, Edward. And beneath them, in tiny letters, don't close the door. At last I sat before the radio and turned the dial once more, 91.2, silence, 91.3, static, 91.4, silence, back to 91.3. This time I said nothing. Sometimes saying nothing becomes the only way to speak. That moment always arrives late. I steadied my breath, kept the fader up, and waited. Then the static slowly erased my voice from yesterday, and another voice came in. It was the voice of someone who had waited a long time, and softly, unmistakably, not inside my ear, but somewhere else, it said, "You heard it too."